If you guys have been on this channel since I restarted this one back up, not my old channel, but this one, you had seen several months ago I had dropped a video on a guy named Flip from the Spanish Cobras. And this was a very interesting episode in Chicago gang history because CPD was doing something very dirty with the Cobras and with this guy. There had been a police officer, okay, who had been killed while he was working security over on the west side. And the police believe that the Spanish Cobras and this one particular member, Flip, were responsible for the police officer's death. So what they started doing was they started arresting Spanish Cobras gang members in large numbers, like really large numbers. They had arrested like over 100 of them within a relatively short period of time. And every single time that they would arrest a Spanish Cobras member, they would tell them that Flip was snitching on them and that Flip was the reason that they were getting locked up. And so they were, basically turning the Spanish Cobras against Flip. Now, this was not true. It was all lies. Flip had never snitched on any of these guys, but they were doing this. And at one point, Flip was stabbed. The other guy that Flip was with was not stabbed. So Flip, survived that stabbing. Obviously, he's still alive today in custody. But the police were caught emailing about this. Okay. And in the emails, they were saying, well, it looks like the Cobras are getting the message. And they were putting like winking emojis. And they were saying that, the operation that they were doing takes the credit for this. And the other guy was saying, well, he's not going to die, though. So it was basically, they were interpreting the stabbing incident as like they're telling the other Cobras that Flip was a snitch, was what had gotten Flip, had an attempt on Flip's life by members of his own gang. So it was something that his lawyer was saying, this really was like criminal activity, like you're the police, you know what I'm saying, because you're basically conspiring to cause somebody else to kill them. I'm not a legal expert, but I'm pretty sure that's illegal. I know that I think they're allowed to lie in certain circumstances, but that kind of a thing is very dirty. So anyways, there was a long legal process going on for about a decade, okay? And this guy Flip, though, now has been convicted and sentenced for the murder of the officer. And his name is Alex. Flip's government name is Alexander. He was convicted as one of the gunmen in the murder of the Chicago police officer whose name was Clifton Lewis. He was sentenced to life in prison on Monday, and he vowed to appeal his verdict and maintain that he was framed by police and prosecutors. So he said, first and foremost, my condolences go out to the Lewis family, but I'm not the person who did this. He's now 35 years old. He said that as he stood at the defense's table. He was facing a courtroom that was half filled with his family and supporters and half with the Lewis family and uniformed CPD officers. He said, I will fight this to the appellate court. I will fight this to the Supreme Court. But I know where I will never have to fight this, and that's in God's court. He knows that I am innocent. So the sentencing hearing comes nearly 4 years, and this is being reported by the Chicago media, after Flip was convicted of gunning down the off-duty Clifton Lewis during a 2011 armed robbery of a convenience store in Austin on the west side, and just weeks after prosecutors dropped all charges against his two co-defendants ahead of a hearing on allegations of misconduct by prosecutors and detectives working on the case. So in the courthouse lobby after the hearing, Clifton Lewis's three sisters said that Flip's sentence gave the family closure after more than a decade. So he had a daughter, Clifton Lewis had a daughter, the cop, and had proposed to his longtime girlfriend, whose name was Latrice Tucker, on Christmas morning of 2011, just days before he was killed. So Tucker had never married, and she died of cancer this past June. So her wake took place the day prosecutors announced that they were dropping the cases against the alleged getaway driver, whose name was Edgardo, and a guy named Tyrone, who was charged as the second gunman in the fatal robbery. So in court on Monday, the assistant state's attorney read aloud a letter that Tucker had written before her death. She said it was like she was there in the courtroom with us, according to Clifton Lewis's sister. She said she loved my brother dearly. We know that they're together now. And the prosecution of the three men charged with Lewis's murder had been troubled. Both of the other guys who had confessed after lengthy interrogations and after they had repeatedly asked for a lawyer. So again, once you ask for a lawyer, the cops are supposed to stop talking to you. And they didn't. So the confessions and the alleged statements that they made in front of witnesses had formed the bulk of the evidence against all three. So these bogus confessions was like the main foundation of the case. So one of the guys was convicted by a jury, a guy Edgardo, in 2017 and sentenced to 84 years. He was several years into that sentence when an appellate court ruled that his confession was inadmissible and he was granted a new trial. So 10 years after his arrest, he was freed on bond while awaiting a second trial. That guy Tyrone spent 12 years locked up and had not made it to trial. His case was delayed by appeals of a judge's ruling that tossed out his confession as well. Flip's sentencing hearing was an hour long. And shout out to the Chicago Sun-Times, by the way, for this story. It came after more than a decade of litigation. This is how long this was in the courts, 10 years, including the last 2 years during which lawyers took on Flip's appeal. They tried several tactics to overturn the verdict. So the judge who presided over the trial in 2019 on Friday had denied a request by Flip's lawyers to grant him a new trial. So earlier this month, another judge denied Flip's motion to assign a new judge to the case. They also denied a motion to appoint a special prosecutor to review the handling of the case. So the new set of lawyers handling Flip's sentencing had subpoenaed a batch of records and requested still more CPD files. His attorney, whose name was Jennifer Blagg, she described those records as a treasure trove of evidence that detectives had hidden from the trial team, information showing that all three men were innocent. His lawyer had lengthy briefs seeking a new trial, 3 motions, each was longer than 100 pages. Each had alleged new categories of missing evidence, but said the records he reviewed would not have changed the outcome of the trial. So his lawyer, Flip's lawyer, said that a map of the FBI created using cell phone data shortly after the shooting showed that all 3 guys were not at the scene when Clifton Loomis was shot, but that map was never turned over to the trial attorney, and the data used to create the map was subsequently lost by CPD. So, in the months after Clifton Lewis's death, a joint CPD-FBI dragnet dubbed by police as Operation Snake Doctor led to more than 100 arrests targeting Flip and members of the Spanish Cobra's gang. But records from the probe were kept separate from the Lewis murder investigation and never provided to the defense. Last fall, another judge who had presided over the other 2 cases of the other 2 guys had ordered a sweeping dump of records related to Snake Doctor and other purportedly missing evidence in the cases before her. So in June, that judge had set a hearing where detectives and prosecutors who had handled the case from its earliest days were subpoenaed to testify about allegations of misconduct. So she's, opening up to see what CPD was doing dirty. Charges were dropped the morning of the hearing. And at the time, the state's attorney's office did not believe it could meet its burden to prove at the trial, they said, based on issues with the case other than those raised by the allegations of the 2 guys who were charged, the other 2 guys who were allegedly Flip's, there with Flip. In the courtroom lobby, his lawyer noted that Flip's co-defendants both confessed after lengthy interrogations, confessions ultimately tossed out by the judges, and that they had gone free. Flip was arrested days after the murder, refused to confess, was released, and wasn't charged until nearly 2 years after the shooting. So that's a big, important detail. He wasn't charged until 2 years after the shooting. So security video from inside the convenience store was played repeatedly for the jurors at Flip's trial, showing 2 gunmen bursting into the store and firing at Clifton Lewis, who ducked behind a counter after returning fire. One man, who was identified as Flip, leapt over the counter and shot Clifton Lewis multiple times before taking the officer's gun. Clifton Lewis lived near the store and had taken a job there as a security guard to make extra money for his wedding. So that was how that ended. So Flip is getting life, and the other 2 guys are going free. So how about that? So let me know what you guys think in the comments section, man. This is a very interesting case in the current state of the legal system in Cook County, isn't it? Because, if Flip was there and they're saying the other 2 guys were with him, everybody who's there, is part of something like this is guilty of something, like related to the murder. And, it took them all this time. So they've already done, 10, 12 years, the other 2 guys, and Flip as well. But he's the only one going down at the end of the day. They're walking free. And all the dirty stuff that CPD had done, as far as like telling Spanish Cobra stuff that could get Flip killed, if in fact it was the Cobras that did the stabbing. We still don't know that to this day. It may have been somebody else, but the other guy that was with him was not stabbed. CPD was speculating that. We don't know if it was in fact the Cobras, but yeah, things are very dirty, man, on all sides. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section, man. Your boy, when you see a report, I'm out.